So in this segment, we're going to be talking about how, this is. Before I start, actually, I want to say this is. I never thought I'd say this. This is great work from CNN, to the point where I would argue that CNN, when it comes to talking about British issues, they're doing a far better job than the BBC have done in the last few years, and that's wild considering CNN's reputation within America. Like, wow, like what a world we live in now. So hopefully the volume on this is fine. I'm going to warn you now, this gentleman here is Scottish, and quite a few of these are Scottish fishermen. There are subtitles, they're not the clearest, because of the way that CNN have done the formatting here. But this video is just great because it's not just me telling you, how much paperwork and stuff like that there is. You can see it, you can physically see it. So we go on to the video here, and this again is great work from CNN and the journalists and stuff involved within this. Massive credit to them.
Fishermen voted for Brexit. Do you think they regret that now?
I never voted for it, but at the moment it doesn't matter who voted for what. We are here and we have to get solutions to go forward.
These fishermen won't benefit from catch quotas renegotiated in the post-Brexit trade deal. Quotas don't apply to most shellfish. Well, this is the very last...
So, the quotas renegotiated that Boris Johnson said was a great victory, which was a great victory for the EU because they got more stuff that they actually wanted, won't actually help them. So that's a lie, and, well done for pointing that out. Massive credit there.
Brown crab being loaded up into this lorry, ready to go to Europe. It's been quick work. They have collected shellfish from individual fishermen and small businesses right across the area. But the next stop for these guys is going to take longer. The logjam starts here.
No. So then we've got to go into the catch certificates. So that's also another certificate.
Okay, another certificate. The export certificate, the catch certificate.
Yes, and then you've got your health certificate. Then we've got our delivery note. Then we've got a commercial invoice. Then we've also got security documents, and we've also got our import entries from the French side as well.
Before Brexit.
So look at all that paperwork, kind of kicking around here. So many papers and documents that are needed because we're a third country now. So many. It's insane.
As well.
Before Brexit, what paperwork needed to be done? Just that.
Just our delivery note.
So about one or two pages. Now, we've covered that in another video. It's about 70 odd pages. It's crazy.
Staying up all night to do paperwork isn't the only problem. These documents cost nearly $5,000 a lorry.
$5,000 per lorry. That's how much the red tape is costing them. And again, this is not to blame the EU because this isn't down to the EU. This is what happens when you become a third country. This is the situation. So, this is not down to them. This is the country we wanted to be. So let's not get it twisted now and start blaming the wrong people when this is down to the British government. We could have chosen to stay in the single market. We could have chosen to stay in the customs union. We did not choose those two options. Never forget that.
We have issues, serious issues, and if they're not solved going forward, businesses won't be here. Plus the fact, live shellfish, it doesn't wait. There's no sell-by date on it. It's live or dead.
For the haulier, arriving at customs is daunting.
Lots of customs queues. There'll be a day late in getting away as it is, due to the paperwork. And then it depends how long they've hold you.
Pip, do you think it's going to get better or is it going to get worse?
You know there's going to be problems before you even get there.
The UK government has announced a $30 million compensation package for fishing businesses impacted by Brexit. Short-term relief, but Miller says it's not enough to stem the carnage. The survival of shellfish hangs in the balance, as does the future of fishing communities in the UK. Anna Stewart, CNN, Peterhead, Scotland.
Yeah, big credit to Anna Stewart there. That's great reporting. Honestly, that's really good. She's talked about the issue. She's talked directly to the people involved in this and got their take on it. And that's what you have to do in these situations, because we know the government are going to lie. This 30 million, where's it going? They've been talking about compensation all this time. It's been almost 2 months since we've left, and they've had to deal with $5,000 per lorry in terms of costs. How much are the government going to cover of that? And how much have they covered so far? Because if the answer is none, then these businesses will go under. So now we cut to the article. Andy Trust has been exporting fish from Cornwall to continental Europe for 20 years. However, the past 7 weeks have given him a cause for to contemplate shutting down the entire European operation of his fish merchant's Ocean Harvest. The cost of sending fish into Europe has now more than trebled in an industry that operates on thin profit margins. It could destroy British fishing. So you can see, an industry that doesn't make that much money anyways, is, their costs have gone up 3 times. And if they put up their cost, the cost of their fish 3 times, people ain't going to buy it. So, they have to absorb the cost, but they're going to struggle to do that because of how much extra it costs and how much profit they make. It has been 7 weeks since the UK completed its departure from the European Union, and Boris Johnson's post-Brexit trade deal has come into effect. In that time, British exporters have struggled with the new trade barriers. In some cases, orders have been slowed down by paperwork. In others, fresh produce has failed to reach its destination in time, forcing it to be destroyed. And so what happens there is the importers from the EU, they simply won't buy from UK exporters because we're not reliable. All of this is a direct result of the UK's decision to leave the EU single market and customs union. Thank you for saying that, because the BBC are always juggling both sides and all this stuff. Honestly, CNN, why can't you be like this in America? For companies who built their business on unfettered access to that market, these barriers put up virtually overnight with little warning have been big consequences. And while it could be argued that these companies had years to prepare for Brexit, the post-Brexit trade deal was only agreed on the 24th of December and came into force on the January 1st. You're talking about, 6 or 7 days to get prepared for this. And it simply wasn't enough. Because within a week, you have to figure out how much paperwork you need to do, what kind of papers and documents you need, and stuff like that. Under these circumstances, you'd expect a government to be doing everything in its power to help struggling businesses. However, critics fear that the Johnson administration has buried its head in the sand. The Prime Minister has called the difficulties no more than teething problems. Only some of the issues we are seeing at present could be legitimately described as teething problems, says Adam Marshall, director of the British Chamber of Commerce. Yes, some firms are facing adjustment, but others are seeing their entire business model upended and their ability to trade successfully undermined. You've got to think £5,000 per lorry, just for paperwork is insane. Last week, Britain's Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab had said he understood some companies were struggling as a result of the sudden change, but that if you take a 10-year view, the growth opportunities in the future are going to come from emerging and developing economies around the world. Like who? You talking about the BRIC economies? Are you talking about Bangladesh? Who are you talking about here? How much growth prospects do they have? And where are these countries geographically? Because we know that countries trade with each other more closely the closer they are. That's one of the reasons why the USMCA, previously known as NAFTA, existed, because Canada, Mexico, and the US all border don't all border each other, but you understand, Canada borders the US and the US borders Mexico and Canada. So it makes sense for these countries to trade with each other. Why? Because they're near each other. You can buy stuff really quickly. We've seen the South American countries have their own trading bloc called Mercosur. This stuff isn't hard to figure out why these countries have done this. If you want to start exporting stuff to Mexico is halfway around the world. It's going to be very difficult and expensive to do that, and it may not be worth the Mexican importers' time when they could import something from Latin America or from the USA or Canada, which would come much quicker. These are not hard things to understand, and the fact that these ministers are coming up with this tells me that they're out of ideas. This isn't much comfort for businesses that export fresh produce, such as Scotland's fishing industry. For many businesses, trading with the EU now feels like a high-risk, longer-odds gamble, says James Withers, Chief Executive of Scotland Food and Drink Lobby Group. The trading system is more costly, complex, slower, and unreliable. For our European customers who need guarantees of products like salmon arriving at a certain time, reliability is everything. And you've got to think, say if you're a restaurant in France, you're a seafood restaurant, or Italy, right? You buy fresh salmon from the UK or fresh fish from the UK, okay? And you use it for, in the evening to cook something, right? So you expect it to come within a day. Now that's stopped happening now because of Brexit. So now you have to order stuff the day before, and say you get it and the fish has come in, it's not fresh, it smells, it's not great, you can't use it. What are you going to do in that situation when you've bought produce that you can't use and you need it on that specific day? You're going to switch suppliers. You're going to find someone who can actually supply you the fresh fish. You might switch to someone from Denmark, a salmon supply from Denmark, who might be able to get it to you within the day because they're in the single market. This is just crazy stuff here. So, we go on. Far from being teething problems, the slower, less reliable trading systems Withers describes are the consequences of new paperwork on things like customs, proof of product origin, and sanitary standards. In the case of companies that import parts from Europe before exporting a finished product, the paperwork is needed at every stage of the supply chain, leaving British exporters at the mercy of European firms, which are also getting their heads around new complex processes. So not only do we have to learn about new stuff, they have to as well. Even though impact of FTAs is usually analysed over a period of time, for a government minister to say we should look at the impact of this deal in 10 years' time when people are losing their jobs and money is a bit tone deaf, especially when you consider that it was down to the government to provide guidance to allow businesses to prepare, says Dr. Anna Jo Wazeska, founder of Trade and Borders, a consultancy which assists exporters and importers across Europe. And she's someone who's tweeted a bit and will be citing those tweets as well. If the current situation sounds dire, some believe it will get worse. Withers points out that controls on EU food imports are due to start in April, and that stockpiles are being depleted. And when Europe's hospitality business emerge from lockdown, demand for food and drink will pick up. If we can't supply them, our competitors will. And so, we know that rules of origin and customs checks will come on to the UK side. So that's British importers who will have to go through, who will have to prove all of this stuff. Who will have to, when they import things, there will be rules of origins and customs checks. So that's going to slow down imports massively and cause problems on our side. Unfortunately for exporters, neither the UK nor the EU seem to be in the mood to reopen the deal after painful Brexit negotiations. Politically, the government has made a decision to prioritise regulatory autonomy over economic integration with the EU, and the trade deal reflects that. It does not facilitate trade, says Sam Lowe, a senior research fellow at the Centre of European Reform. At the time, these changes have mostly affected those looking to export. However, there is also major concern on the long-term impact that Johnson's Brexit deal will have on UK's financial services, something we've spoken about before. When we emerge from lockdown and British actors, musicians and people providing professional services start looking at taking jobs in Europe, there will be the introduction of a world of visas, work permits and European embassies that they never had to worry about before. We've talked about musicians in the past not having, the ability to freely move into Europe and do tours and stuff. They're going to have to apply for visas, and that's going to be especially difficult for small bands. One of the biggest fears of a hard Brexit was the impact it would have on the City of London, the world-class financial hub that's been the envy of Europe for decades. While London has not seen the flight of jobs many predicted, there have been job losses. Billions of euros in shares have switched to Amsterdam from London since January 1st. This doesn't have much of an immediate impact, as the work can still be done in London by staff in London, but if this trend continues, it could undermine Britain's status as the financial capital of Europe and impact future inward investment. And you've got to think that if the UK stock market isn't looking too good, companies may float their stocks on other stock markets in Europe, because it's going to be far easier for people to buy and trade their stocks. It has been known for a long time that financial services were not going to be covered in the trade deal. In some respect, that made life easier for financial firms because it's such a heavily regulated sector. There hasn't been too much disruption or job losses, says Lowe. I think this is something we've talked about before, actually. However, he believes that the impact could come later down the line. If you're looking to easily sell new financial services across Europe in the future, why do you need to headquarter yourself Amsterdam or London? The answer isn't as clear-cut as it once was. Many analysts thought that the initial trade deal would smooth the path to some future impact on financial services, but the UK government being bullish on about the merits of its agreement with Brussels, making noise about London's businesses, things don't look promising. There may be closer cooperation, but I doubt at the moment. What's more concerning is the government's gaslighting. They don't admit there is a problem, they play it down, they say wait 10 years. Which one is it? Is it fine, or do we need to wait 10 years? And what about the people currently suffering, supposed to do in that time, says Anand Menon, Professor of European Politics at King's College London. And that's a key point here, is the UK constantly gaslighting people, making them believe that, the problem that you're having, it's not a real problem, it's not a major problem. In a few years' time, it's going to sort itself out. We're working to fix things. The EU are going to repeal a ban on third-party shellfish that hasn't been purified. The EU didn't do that, and now the UK are like, oh, don't worry about it. Something British. What's it called, man? British patriotism. All this blah 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 stuff. believe in the country and all this crap, when we can see that they are gaslighting the public on this. Liz Truss, the International Trade Secretary, has refused to answer questions from lawmakers about their concerns about the deal, whilst the government says it has no plans to publish an impact assessment, something we've talked about in the past. And obviously the reason they're not going to do that is because that would highlight all of the problems with the deal. Others are pessimistic about the long term, and unsure if the government is unaware or in denial about how bad things could get. It is entirely possible that 10 years from now the UK will have pivoted to exporting beyond Europe, says Simon Usherwood, Professor of Politics at the University of Surrey. My concern is that it will be as part of an overall reduction in trade, meaning a smaller economy and ultimately job losses. Alistair Campbell, Labour spin doctor, former Labour spin doctor. It makes my blood boil. I think they're in denial because they cannot handle the consequences of their policies, and they are battering some of our greatest industries and trying to distract everyone by picking fake fights and starting culture wars, which is pretty spot on. If there's a man who knows about spin, it's him. So now we cut to Dr. Anna Jowazeska. Rob's 10-year view comment would work well in a macroeconomics paper. It's not incorrect, but no one wants to hear that right now. Even though we got a deal in the end, we did crash out. It was a cliff edge. Our Brexit process could be compared to a student trying to cram a term's worth of study in one night. Time and resources were wasted, and when we finally got a deal at the end of December, there was no implementation period, the one thing that all industries, businesses and associations and devolved administrations called for. So if we had a year implementation policy, we could have figured out all of the pitfalls with regards to Brexit, customs checks, rules of origin, all that stuff. We would also know that the EU weren't going to repeal their ban on unpurified shellfish not from A-grade waters, and so that would have gave fishermen more time to prepare, specifically with shellfish, how to export their products. But obviously we didn't do that. While the impact of leaving with a simple free trade deal was always going to be significant, I still think more could have been done to help companies withstand the first wave of changes. And the UK has done that in part by stopping rules of origins checks and customs checks on our side. That's to help British importers. But because they didn't allow an implementation period, the EU set up checks straight away, so they didn't fall under problems with the WTO, and that caused hell with exporters. Which we're not a massive exporting country when it comes to goods, but we do still export stuff. And when it comes to fresh products, this deal has basically killed us. Not being in the single market has basically killed us. Has killed those industries anyways. Let's see. A lot of that was to do with clear guidance. Sorry. While the impact of leaving with a simple FTA was always going to be significant, I think more could have been done. A lot of that was to do with clear guidance being available on time, but mostly with messaging from the government. So a tone-deaf comment on that front, especially with the the fisheries minister having no idea what was going on because she was at a nativity play. So what can we gather from this situation here? The British government are being accused accurately, I would say, of gaslighting the public and obviously industries when it comes to Brexit problems. And if they're doing that, that means that they probably have no intention of actually fixing the problems, or they're just buying themselves time. Who knows? That's one of the reasons why they're always picking culture war fights, because they know that's going to appeal to a large segment of the population who love culture war stuff. But yeah, I don't know what more to say apart from the fact that the service economy is going to take a hit. The service sector is going to take a hit from Brexit, undoubtedly, and the goods, fresh products are taking a huge hit from Brexit, and I don't know where we go from here, because the government are refusing to accept any consequences. They're saying take a 10-year approach. A lot of these guys may not still be in charge within 10 years. I don't think Boris Johnson's going to run again in 2025, and if he does, I reckon he'll lose. Sorry, it'd be 2024, wouldn't it? I don't think he'll run again in 2024, and if he does, I'm not sure if he'll lose, but I'm the stress of this job. You can see his hair's falling out. He's looking like third form Freezer. So who knows at this point, but yeah, it's hard to kind of further talk about this one. I think we've covered most of the main topics: the gaslighting, the problems that we're having, all of the paperwork. We've talked previously in the past with the amount of paperwork. 72 pages per lorry. I don't know if that's the same for this one, but you can see there's a hell of a lot of papers there. Also, the fact that it's costing them 5Gs per lorry for customs checks. For altogether to send a lorry of fish, different kinds of fish. It's just insane. But these are the rules of becoming a third country, and if the government always knew that this was going to be the outcome, that they'll get a free trade agreement with quotas, with no quotas and tariffs, but with customs checks, the government should have been explained to the public and industries for the last year what customs checks are, and how much they cost, and what specifics you need in order to export products to the EU. And this would have helped out a lot of companies and a lot of people, but they didn't do that because they had no idea what they were doing. These guys are a bunch of headless chickens. But yeah, I don't know what more to say apart from like, comment, share, subscribe. Do you think that the government is gaslighting Britain? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm on Discord. You can find that link in the bio of the channel. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one.